off, and I'm going to begin with asking the mayoral questions, and then Ron will be asking the questions of the council candidates. Challenger Jim Skane is 83 and a retired University of Northern Iowa professor of communications. This is his second run for the mayor's seat. Challenger Rob Green, 43, is a current at-large Cedar Falls City Council member. He has lived in Cedar Falls since 2004 and works at UNI and IT services as a web developer. Incumbent Jim Brown, 51, is seeking his third term as mayor of Cedar Falls. He was first elected in 2015 after defeating former Mayor John Cruz in a runoff election. I will now give each candidate 2 minutes to make opening remarks, and we will start with Mayor Brown.
Thank you, Nancy, and thanks to all the folks who have sponsored and put this great event on, and appreciate the audience here, the civic-minded audience to come here, the three candidates for mayor and then the other candidates for city council. My name is Jim Brown, married to Corrine Brown, who is a career teacher. She teaches in the Cedar Falls School District. We have two daughters. One is in college, and she went through the Cedar Falls Community School District, and Annie right now is going through Cedar Falls High School. Corrine and I both are alumni of University of Northern Iowa. We met actually right after we both graduated, and we've grown roots ever since then, and I guess the rest, as they say, is history. My background before becoming mayor was 6 years on the Cedar Falls School Board. It was a pleasure to serve in that capacity with those individuals and, again, our great school district. And my business background was in economic or business development, sales, and marketing. When I ran 4 years ago, that was one of the premises I believe we could utilize our community, use Cedar Falls, if you will, as a product, and get that product out not only regionally throughout the state, but also worldwide. The other thing was leadership and also communication skills. I think the economic development can be spoken for pretty much by itself. Any corridor we go through in this great community, along with great, fantastic partners, you can see the kind of growth that I think is amazing, and it is critical for the growth of any community as far as the quality of life and the things that we can actually afford. The communications piece, it's just who I am in terms of getting on Channel 15, probably more times than more people care to see. Have different sorts of programs there to keep folks informed of what's going on in the city. Various periodicals such as the Currents events that just came out about 2 weeks ago, and then leadership skills, good solid meetings, good leadership in terms of how the city is to be directed. I want to continue those three items as well with an emphasis even more so. We've done a great job, but I think an emphasis even more with technology. Thank you.
Mr. Green.
First, thank you to NISG, Women of Action, and Cedar Valley Activate for organizing this forum, and to Ms. Newhoff and Mr. Steele for conducting it. I am a UNI web developer. My cubicle is about 400 feet from here. I've been in technology and teaching for about 15 years now, and before that was a Coast Guard cadet and commissioned officer for a decade before that. I love creating, mentoring, and teaching, and UNI is a fantastic place to work. So why would I leave what I love to serve as mayor? It comes down to civic responsibility, and my belief that if you have constructive ideas and the ability and opportunity to carry them out, then you have a clear duty to act, and that's why I'm running. When I was elected to City Council 2 years ago, I did so with a set of principles and a desire to be a good steward of the government that's carried out in your name. My decision to run for mayor wasn't an easy one. Like many of you, I voted for Mayor Brown in 2015 and again in 2017. But during these past 2 years on City Council, I've found that I have profound and fundamental disagreements with Mayor Brown on the conduct and oversight of government. This race isn't about my ego or believing that I'm better than anyone. It's about having a vision for how government decisions ought to be made and an honest desire to carry that vision out. I expect that during this forum, Mayor Brown will be able to run circles around me regarding some of the issues, but that's because he's had 4 years in the mayor role already. What I hope you'll focus on in these next 45 minutes are the 4 Ps: principles, philosophy, perspective, and potential. The role of mayor is much more than a job. It's a position of honor and trust in the community. And every 2 years, you get to decide whether the person called mayor has lived up to the extremely high standards that we should have for the role. Based on my own observations and those of others, it's clear that change is needed in City Hall, and I look forward to explaining why tonight.
Mr. Skane.
It is a pleasure to be here at UNI and in Maucker Union at this forum sponsored by the Northern Iowa Student Government, Women of Action, and Cedar Valley Activate. Maucker Union was important to me when I taught here. I came to Cedar Falls in 1965 to teach in the speech department at the State College of Iowa. I taught at SEI and after 1968 at UNI when it was growing in the number of students and in reputation. When I retired in 1998, UNI had over 13,000 students, had increased its tradition of excellence with strong academic programs and a history of educating excellent teachers. UNI continued to grow in students and reputation until 2012, when the Board of Regents decided to cut 50 academic programs, close Price Laboratory School, and tear down the Price Lab building. Why? The reason has never been clear, but the result was devastating. The number of students declined, as did UNI's reputation. UNI continued to decline. Today, the number of students is the same as it was in 1976. UNI needs the support of the entire community. UNI is now a major issue in the 2019 city elections. UNI needs our support to restore its tradition of excellence. There are critical issues in the November 5th election. Restoring UNI's tradition of excellence is one of them.
We're now to the portion of the debate where we ask audience questions. Some of these questions have come in already before the debate by email, but we're going to go right to the heart of a big issue in this city, the PSO program. How do you frame this issue for the city of Cedar Falls going forward? Can each of you best explain why you believe it works or doesn't work? Mr. Green.
And time limits for that?
1 minute.
1 minute, okay. So I am a proponent of cross-training firefighters or police officers to be firefighters. So PSOs in themselves, I don't have a problem with. Where it becomes an issue is where we replace firefighters with PSOs. Augmenting makes total sense, and that's when I ran for council. That's what I was told the program was about. But since that time, we've shifted into a complete, what's going to be an overtake of the program by PSOs. And I fully expect that without having a detailed strategic plan in place for what we want to see from the PSO model forward, it's going to continue shifting to that. Whether we specifically want that to happen or not, we are going to lose our firefighters.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. I'll just remind folks that this is a council-approved model, which I do support. In fact, all 7 of our council members have voted no less than 14 times for this model. I do support it. Fires are down 60% the last 40 years. Cedar Falls averages roughly 6 to 8 fires each year. How many firefighters do we need for those kind of numbers? I stand up for safety as well. I want more firefighters, and I appreciate the council supplying now 70 cross-trained firefighters for our community. The ISO rating came back when the world was going to fall apart, when it was going to go down, and it maintained a 3. We're the top 3.5% of fire departments in the state. As most folks know, most of the fire departments in the state are volunteer. I've been married to Karina almost 26 years. We have 2 teenage daughters. If I didn't think for a moment this was the safest model we could ever produce in the city of Cedar Falls, I would do all I possibly could as mayor to stop it. But I look at the facts, not the emotion of this issue.
Mr. Skane.
The PSO model is a disaster, and it has made Cedar Falls very much more unsafe. There has been a systematic effort to take and eliminate professional firefighters. Right now, we're down to 14. 14. And at the same time, fire protection is not strong because we have the Fire Station 2 closed, and we continue to depend upon cross-trained individuals. Cross-training is not a good way to staff anything, because you can be very good at one thing, but when you add a second, then there's mediocrity.
Couple follow-up questions. We'll start with Mr. Brown on this one. We've had a couple questions come in about the future of North Cedar Fire Station. Will it reopen or should it reopen?
I don't think it will reopen. From my understanding is after the 2008 flood, many homes were lost up there. The city did its part in terms of making more green space and the flood buyouts. The most important thing I think that it overlies the North Cedar Fire Station is the correct or the acceptable response times from now the new public safety building south of town and the previous, the existing building we had before at 18th and Main.
Mr. Skane.
Yes. If you live in North Cedar, you are 7 miles away from the nearest effective fire station. The fact that the city has kept Fire Station 2 closed has enabled some disastrous fires in the North Cedar area. That's because there has been a lack of vision. I mean, we have just spent $11 million plus to build the public safety building. And for many parts of Cedar Falls, there is fire protection very far away. And so, yeah, I would open it. I would reopen it quick, and I would hire more firefighters, because the PSO model is a disaster.
Mr. Green.
I believe we'll see a reopen North Cedar Fire Station when we increase development, new housing, and greater population north of the river, and I strongly support pushing for those efforts. North Cedar has traditionally been underserved, and while I can't financially justify reopening the fire station right now, I believe the city needs to place an emphasis on increasing the desirability of North Cedar as a residential community. We're making strides, but we need to do more.
I want to go back to the public safety officer question, and this comes, again, it's not my question, it comes from the audience. Are all of the public safety officers trained to the professional firefighter standards, or, as this person puts it, a minimal volunteer standards? And I assume what they're meaning there is a volunteer fire department like Hudson or Denver. So are all of them trained to be professional, trained to the standards of professional firefighter standards?
We'll start with Mr. Skane.
Yeah, no, they're not. I mean, anybody cross-trained is not as good as someone who is professionally trained. And so when you put all these people, and I kind of smiled at the mayor's statement that you have 70 prepared firefighters. It was in the currents, but it's a false statement. You don't have that many. You have 14, and then you have a mishmash of PSOs who are some just now getting their Firefighter 1 certification. So, no, it's not good, and I would certainly work to eradicate that program.
Mr. Green.
That's a great question, and it's something I think a lot about, because there is this perception that once somebody's trained, they're going to retain those competencies over time. But from my military background and having gone through firefighting training and through law enforcement training, I know that it takes a significant amount of time and effort to keep those skills up. So my question wouldn't be, are they trained right now to the degree they need to be trained, but it's will they retain those competencies 2 or 3 years from now? And what incentives do we have and certification processes are we requiring in order to keep the public safety officers and we call the traditional firefighters, to keep them up to a standard that the residents of Cedar Falls can expect? You could have super trained public safety professionals, and there's going to be an extreme cost to it. What are we willing to accept in order for the safety of our city to be secured?
Mr. Brown.
Yes, they are. They are trained to a state certified level to be Firefighter 1 certified. They are also, the main questions here are we safe as a community Do we have enough firefighters, and are they trained? They are trained to be initial firefighters. There's ongoing training. I go there many times a week and see the folks engaged with all sorts of training. I could take 5 minutes describing whether it's tight rescue quarters or water rescue, and the list goes on. I just have one question, because this model's been really implemented the last 12 to 18 months by our council. I don't believe anyone can see our community, 40,000 people with a Regent University, and look the last 12 to 18 months and say our city is not safe. And once again, I wouldn't behold my own family to that kind of standard if that was the case, and no other council person would either, or staff, just to get back and remove the fire department. We are safe, they are trained, and we have 70 firefighters.
One more in this area, and then I want to go to a couple other areas. Whoever wins this will have to work with the departments, the police and fire, to bring everyone back together. How will you work to heal these relationships, Mr. Green?
A big part of that is being able to articulate and express what the concerns of the firefighters are. I've found that to be a major issue in the last year or so, when I went through and spoke at length, both with current firefighters, with the former fire chief, and with other knowledgeable community people on the fire program. And I feel that in order to heal some of the rift, it requires an increase of trust with the senior city leadership and senior staff. So it's going to have to be the mayor stepping forward and not necessarily agreeing with the concerns, but at least being able to say, I hear you, I understand where you're coming from, and to take action based on that, so that the firefighters at least believe that they're being heard.
Mr. Brown.
Yes, I will say I'll continue to do mostly what I've done the last 12 to 18 months. About a year ago, I took 2 council members and staff members and went down to 3 different shifts at the fire station. 3 different days we went down there. I went in front of that group and said, we want you, we need you, you can be a part of something amazing in Cedar Falls, much like the decisions we've made over the years have made Cedar Falls that great. From there, we lost some firefighters, so under the false premise that we weren't safe. We have tried for a long time, along with staff, to sit down with this union group leader, sit down with PERB, the Public Employee Relation Board, only to set up an appointment to solve some of these issues, but have that that meeting canceled. We have also brought together 2 of the head union groups within the state, again, to get an appointment to solve these grievances and these appeals. All these grievances and appeals have cost the city about $50,000 the last year. We want to continue to reach out. One time my wife and I went over at Christmas to turn over some goodies to the fire department on Christmas Day between family coming in. We were greeted by most, except a couple of those individuals. It's very disappointing.
Mr. Skane.
Yes, I've been here a long time. I've seen the fire department out at the river doing safety training. I've seen the fire department in the schools teaching the children how to deal with the fire. I've seen the fire department do many of these things, and that's why I would, as part of the process, I would divide the police and fire departments, and I would have each head of those departments be reporting to the mayor, not to a public safety director.
All right, Mr. Brown, I guess, I'm not sure what order we're in here, but let me ask you this. I'm going to go back just real quick here to an earlier question. The question comes again from the audience. Considering the claim that the number of firefighters has now doubled, then why not open the North Cedar Fire Station? If that's the case, if there are double the number of firefighters available, then why not get it reopened? To help those
yes, absolutely. From staff and from council's consideration, it's budgetary. It's also the plan that moves forward with the 4600 South Main Street Fire Station opening, and the ability to take those routes up to North Cedar from that location or from the 18th and Main, which has been acceptable in terms of the firefighter standards. There's also the future planning that we have in terms of potentially having a second satellite fire department along First Street, because then that will have better access to the far northwest part of the city and potentially more western of the city, as you know, where we're growing more for residential and for commercial. So number one is budgetary. I think it's also the matter of calls and what's being looked into the future to have actually a brand new station up there for that kind of access to North Cedar.
Mr. Skane.
Yes, it's, I've never seen at a firehouse. We built with $11 million, a new public safety building, which removed fire safety from many, many people. Now, the money should have gone in to hiring more firefighters, reopening Fire Station 2, and then, as a result, reinstitute the training, which, as I have been told in the last day, they used to have training for the utility process, and yet that training is no more. Why? Are we safer because we have a public safety director and a $11 million public safety?
I believe that means you're over time. Okay.
Time to wake up.
Mr. Green.
Yeah, so the reason for not having the North Cedar Fire Station open and with the personnel involved really comes down to our goal-setting sessions. And each October and then into November, council meets for 4-hour sections over the course of 2 days. And these kinds of decisions about where we want to see budgetary funding go, what we want to see as priorities or not priorities, that happens during those sessions, which are open to the public, but they're not very well attended. It's something that you as residents really need to appreciate how much of what happens during the year occurs in that goal-setting session. And it's a concern that I have for the fact that those meetings are not publicized to the public. They're officially open meetings, but in order to have the kind of dialogue and for you to be able to listen to our council discussions, such as things like the North Cedar Fire Station and where we put personnel, I strongly recommend attending those sorts of events. But that's where those kinds of decisions occur.
I want to talk about public safety real quickly because that is the heart of the issue. So, Mayor Brown, I'm going to have you go first here because you say the city is safer. What is the evidence supporting that the city is now safer than before, or at least as safe as before the PSO program began? Where's the evidence?
Sure. The evidence is the last year to year and a half, and even through the whole process, I think, well, the previous model is having 6 to 7 career firefighters at a fire station, getting ready to explore, getting ready to have a call and take care of it. Now, when a fire scene comes on, we had a scene today at Green Hill Road, some tragedy there. One of our public safety officers was there first to give the care and to receive and to give the directions for the folks coming to that scene. Plus, we are seeing, never before seen numbers in terms of how many folks are showing up at the fire department, the fires, and the different tragedies that we have around the town in terms of the fires. And I'm sorry, I'm going all over the place. We have more firefighters at this scene than ever before. More police as well on the streets as well. Thank you.
Mr. Skane.
Having more people there does not mean you have the ability to fight the fire. I've heard Public Safety Director Jeff Olson say, well, you know, if it's a fire, they'll get out with their foamers, and I laugh because if you're engaged in a major fire, those foamers aren't going to do it a bit of good. And that's why it's really a tragedy that the city has embarked upon this program. And it's another dimension of it, if I may say. There's been intimidation and harassment of professional firefighters that has caused many to resign, and it has also caused them to be dismissed for when I look at the charges, you know, no system would support those.
Mr. Green.
When we look at a really nebulous concept like safety, are we more safe than we were before? It's very difficult to pin down the exact metrics that are most effective for deciding that. I have great concerns about the number of people we put on a scene, about because it doesn't take into account their level of training, their experience. So certainly you could have 19 people show up to a scene, but are those the right 19 people? I recently watched a documentary on the Vietnam War, and one of the things that really hit home for me that I think about as a government official now is this idea for Secretary McNamara saying, when you can't measure what's important, then what you can measure becomes important. And that's what I'm really concerned about, some of the things that we're using for our metrics with this program. And it's why I really want to push a strategic plan that takes into account much stronger data and actual identified material to do that.
Okay, I do want to go back to this issue, but we do have some other issues we do want to ask. Let's start with Mr. Skane. How does the city maintain the integrity of its core as it expands outward with commercial and housing development?
Well, that's part of the problem. Over the last 5 years, there has been a strong push for economic development. Now, economic development may well be good, but each of those companies, and I've examined some of them at the city council, come with a huge subsidy. In one case, the city gave that company 18 acres plus other incentives. Now, if they're giving those incentives and there's not the tax money that should coming in, then who pays for it? The people. And that's why city services have been cut. That's why so many other things have gone wrong for the people.
Mr. Green.
So one of the things that I think about for economic development and what our big considerations have to be in order to keep the DNA of our community. We don't want to lose what we are, but we do need to grow because that's what the world does. It grows. It's a positive thing, but I very much support the idea of promoting infill development as much as possible, so that as you're growing, you're not necessarily expanding outward, but you're improving inward. And we see some great successes, and I give the mayor great credit for that, for Slumberland and seeing this decrepit Hy-Vee become a brand new facility now with some ancillary uses on the side for what's happening in downtown. But we also have to be careful, as we see in downtown, to avoid the risk of explosive growth where it seems uncontrolled and we're not able to adapt to the unintended consequences of that growth.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
Yes, a real quick example is a couple of companies came to the South Industrial Park and took up a certain size lot from the city. And we still had folks knocking on our door wanting that size lot. So we went southwest. We did expand outward by some annexation because, again, the business is there and the capital will go where capital is treated best. At the same time, you can take a look at the evidence we have all throughout our core in relation to our downtown. Fantastic growth. With council's reconsideration of the zoning and such, down there I think it's only going to get better. Our University Avenue corridor, the Hill I still think is a little bit tired. We could still do some real neat things around there. And then our North Industrial Park, which I predicted 4 years ago would be full, and we're about 70% right now. So I do believe you can control the expansion there, but then also make sure those focuses are at our traditions, if you will. And of course, we can point to downtown, because it's an award-winning downtown, and some fantastic things are happening there.
Thank you. Let's start with you, Mr. Green. How should Cedar Falls handle its future wastewater needs?
Well, it's something that I was asked that question recently, and I can't give a solid answer for that just yet, because we are doing a study in order to determine what our needs are, what the costs are for various proposals, so I believe it'd be premature to give an answer on that.
Okay, Mr. Brown. Yeah.
Okay, sure. It's a big issue, it's a long-term issue, it's a very expensive issue for wastewater treatment. Really the two options that council will be considering over the years is to join in with Waterloo. We've had some great meetings with Mayor Hart and his staff in terms of the study that took place, if it could still work from the study that took place about 40 years ago. There's also the option for council to consider to have our own wastewater treatment facility sort of out in the middle of nowhere and still have a pumping station for that same sort of activity that you have to have for wastewater. The key difference is the dollars, but what I'll give credit to the city staff and to the folks that came before me is that we have stayed on top of our wastewater treatment facility. We've spent millions of dollars to make sure we're up to snuff as far as the EPA and the different regulations. And our permit process now, we're good for 5 years. So council, I believe, will be considering whether or not we're going to spend money to look at that while we're okay, but also the options available, again, with our neighbors or on our own.
Mr. Skane.
Yes, I think that part of the problem with wastewater is the increased bringing of the industrial factors, which create more wastewater than the average situation would be. And I think that the fact that they're not being controlled in this area is indeed the part of the problem. And what Mayor Brown outlines may indeed be the future. But in the meantime, there is a real problem. I mean, the Cedar River is a real problem.
We're sitting on a great campus of UNI, and I know we have some UNI students in here, so we did want to ask a question on their behalf. And how do you plan, if you're as mayor, to partner with UNI in any future endeavors? We'll start with Mayor Brown.
You bet. It really is a pleasure to be here at this campus. I visit often just because of various events with my wife, Karina, who I mentioned before. We're graduates of University of Northern Iowa. We have a very good working relationship with President Nook and his wife Cheryl and the other vice presidents throughout the university. And it's a good relationship not only on a personal level but also professional level. One thing I'll point out is I pushed very hard along with a few other council members a few years ago to put an NISG student liaison not just involved with our city council meetings where we conduct business, but there happened to be an extra chair on the dais. And it just made sense to have that individual up there. It's been fantastic, been a good learning experience for the two students we've had, and get great updates from them as well. Right now, we just entered into a CAPS program and also just one-on-one with the university to have a nice young man follow City Administrator Gaines. It's a job shadowing effect. And then we typically will just get together for the streets. If a street needs to get done, how best we can partner with those. And will continue to enjoy that relationship.
Mr. Skane.
Yeah. The whole situation with UNI is not as simple as has been described. It's going to take a massive action, working, lobbying with the Board of Regents, with the legislators, with the governor, to get back what UNI had. And it's not a simple kind of thing. It's not just a matter of partnering. And that's why if I am elected mayor, one of the first things that I will do is to set up a UNI task force to coordinate all that action that needs to be done. But UNI is in trouble because the Board of Regents has made it have trouble.
Mr. Green.
Well, it's a very different environment now at UNI than it was 20 years ago for the educational opportunities for students, the fact they don't necessarily see higher education as a necessity, as it doesn't have the cachet that it has in years past. So, of course, UNI is struggling with that. I can dovetail on what Mayor Brown said. I agree with his views and recommendations. I would also say that when it comes to the UNI liaison, from my conversations with the liaisons, and I meet with them at the start of every school year, I have a concern about the ability for the student rep to provide information to council. As it was, at least last year, the agreement or the limit was the student could not speak unless spoken to. And it seems that there's a censoring or a limitation on what the person is able to say. And I believe that that role should be greater for the student liaison to be able to speak at the level the council does.
University of Northern Iowa and the city of Cedar Falls are irrevocably connected. So UNI students, social life is a big part of college activities. They should feel safe to be able to walk down to the hill and not be concerned for their safety, as we're talking about public safety here tonight. So express your concerns about the recent sporadic violence in the Hill area and what steps you think further steps need to be taken to remedy that.
I believe we start with Mr. Skane.
Frankly, I don't know what needs to be done. It could have been just a outbreak that happens sometimes at homecoming, but I haven't heard that it is continuing. It may be that the matter has been brought under control. But I think basically the people on the UNI campus and in the surrounding areas are able to operate safely, and the situation needs to be observed to see if that violence has abated or will it continue.
Mr. Green.
Okay, so one of the most interesting things that for me on council that I've experienced is doing ride-alongs with the police department. And I'll tell you that College Hill after 10 p.m. is nothing like College Hill in the daytime. And unless I was in a squad car, I probably wouldn't be out experiencing it for myself. I'm very glad that we've installed security cameras and surveillance in the College Hill neighborhood area. As I've done foot patrols with the police department, the officers and I go into the bars and we look at the environment, and it's not college students that are causing the issues. So how we react is going to, I think, heavily involve a partnership, continued partnership with the Waterloo Police Department in dealing with gang violence. I believe it's not sporadic; it's basically organized. And in order to deal with that problem, we're going to have to come at it in an organized fashion as well.
Where does the riverfront development and recreational...
Nancy.
Mr. Brown.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. That's all
Go
right.
ahead.
I'll have to remind you.
She did.
Mr. Brown.
She did. Yes.
Well, we always see an uptick in the activity when the students come back. We have invested the cameras down, utilizing the world's best internet for that sort of oversight. We've also put together community meetings after the last couple of years with the different instances down there. And it's important to call these meetings that I've called to help collaborate with the business owners as well on the Hill. Here's the beauty of the public safety model, ladies and gentlemen. This last Saturday night, homecoming evening, we had 36 police officers covering the entire city with a focus on the Hill. Now, Monday, we might have 5 officers because it's a Monday or a Sunday afternoon. We can predict when that crime or when that activity will increase. 36 police officers patrolling the city with the emphasis with homecoming without an incident.
Okay, now I have a question. We'll start with Mr. Green. Where does the riverfront development and recreational plan for the Cedar River fit into your vision for the community?
Well, originally I was very hesitant about the water features, the in-water features that were being proposed, especially as I was running for council 2 years ago. I went out to Manchester a couple of months ago, just on an average weekend day, and was amazed to see I counted 45 people either in the water or around the water. And it wasn't just kayakers that were benefiting from this. It was people wading in life jackets, kids, and people in canoes and little tubes. And so I believe that it's a valuable asset to the city, and I would support it. I do believe strongly there has to be a private component to it because there is a benefit to select people. If kayakers really want to use the river, they need to be part of that. So I fully support the, I think, $800,000 we're expecting from them, and also looking forward to assistance from the Blackhawk County Gaming Commission on it.
Mr. Brown.
You bet. If folks love our downtown now, in the last 3, 5, 6 years, just hang on to your hats, I think, with this river improvement project. Council did approve in the CIP for, I think, 2022 to have that in place with the riverbank improvements, the water features down below. I believe that our downtown will even become more of a destination for individuals who want to come, live, work, and play, or even visit. It would be an incredible boom to the visitors and tourism. And as you know, we have a couple of new hotels, one new hotel downtown, a new owner as well downtown. That's going to just simply add to the kind of tourism dollars we count on and rely on the expertise of the great folks of our visitors and tourism south of town. So folks had the perception of the parking problem, and I think the city was very responsive to that. Amazingly, when we have Sturgis Falls, we don't hear of parking problems because there's an event going on. Folks know it's going to happen. I believe once the river improvement project is done, it'll be an event each weekend, and although we'll pay attention to the parking, I think folks will be less sensitive to that.
Mr. Skane.
Yeah, I think there's not enough attention being paid to the other side of the river. I mean, all these millions of dollars being spent to improve the downtown side of the river. But I think the plan that is under consideration doesn't consider the people on the other side of the river. And I think that there should be recognition that some of the things that are there should stay there and not be sacrificed for that water improvement program.
We're just about out of time, believe it or not, but I want to go back to the heart of the campaign this time. And Mr. Skane and Mr. Green, you're going to answer this differently, but if you're elected, your priority then will be to reverse the PSO program, and do you have the votes to do that? Mayor Brown, if you're reelected, then your focus will be on keeping the program going forward. Can each of you answer that for me?
Well, that's a misconception. I'm not looking to nuke the PSO model.
Okay.
I believe it needs significant change in order to be sustainable over the long term, and I believe that the only way we can move forward with understanding what those changes are is to look at data to understand why we built this model to begin with and to put it into a single document that the public can understand and to move forward based on that as a community.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown.
Mayor Brown. Yeah, again, I believe the evidence is there. We're safe. We have enough firefighters. They get trained. You know, it's interesting because Mr. Green couldn't say he wanted to dismantle the program because he's voted 14 out of 15 times for the model, the public safety model. And so it's a council-approved model. I think it's smart. I think it's visionary. And we'll just continue to monitor things as we go. The goal setting that was mentioned earlier, Director Olson gives accomplishment and goals public safety update to council last goal setting session. What happened in the past, what's happening now, what's happening in the future. And we can always lobby council to look at various different things. Mr. Green lobbied to have a strategic plan, and the other 6 council members said, no, we're good. We like this update this year. We've liked it in the past. We'll continue to move forward as we see fit.
Mr. Skane?
The PSO model would be history if I were elected. It is bad. I mean, how many signs do you see in Cedar Falls right now? We need more firefighters. Now, that doesn't indicate that the people are happy with the PSO model. And I think that it is good, as I said before, to divide the police and the fire into separate departments, as it was before 2014, and then to begin to build by hiring firefighters instead of cross-trained individuals.
There is something we haven't used during this hour, the 30-second rebuttal. I can tell Councilman Green wants to use that right now.
So this, I saw this 14 out of 15 votes, and I looked at it, and I'm surprised it comes from the mayor, because he should know better. Some of the items that he had listed as being the 14 votes, one was soil sample testing at the public safety building, and it's listed on that sheet. He voted to approve the PSO building. That's not true. It's ridiculous. So I'll talk more about that at the League of Women Voters Forum, since that'll be my time for it, and tune in there.
Thank you very much. We are at the point to keep on
I'd
Mayor
sure like,
Brown.
yeah,
task.
you
Oh.
bet. There's a lot of votes. They're formal and informal, but I had a city clerk look up the votes, just in terms of how council has looked at that. There's 15 votes. There's, back in February, 8 police employees reclassified as PSOs, 1 employee classified as PSO, the civil service list for PSO. Ample opportunities, if you're really against it, to vote against it.
We can rebuttal all night.
Thank you.
Does he get 30 seconds?
Can
Yes,
I-
Mr.
I-
Skeen,
I'd like to
absolutely.
say something. The way the city council operates, there can be any number of things that go by because the city council operates on the fact that whole sections are voted without debate and on a single vote. And thousands of dollars go by the board and nobody, not even including the council people, know what's happened.
Thank you very much. We're going to give each of the candidates now 1 minute on closing remarks. We'll start with you, Mr. Skeen.
Thank you for everything that you have done for this particular forum. The November 5th election is one of restore. Restore the mayor as the leader of the government. Restore fire safety. Restore the cuts in city services. Restore University Avenue as a corridor. Restore UNI's tradition of excellence. I thank the Northern Iowa Student Government and Rebecca and the Women of Action and Cedar Valley Activate for providing this opportunity for the Cedar Falls community. I think it's been wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. Green.
I have no doubt that Jim Brown is seeking out what's best for the city of Cedar Falls. He's a decent and honorable man and has carried out his campaign like a gentleman. I want to assure the public that I have no ill will toward him personally. That said, I believe that the mayor role demands exemplary leadership talents, keen perception, strong empathy, and emotional intelligence. Only through the exercise of these critical traits can the mayor expect to retain the special trust and confidence of the people. Jim Brown has a passion for business development and would make a fantastic economic development coordinator or chamber of commerce director, but I believe that I have the stronger skill set for service as mayor and a vision and plan for enhancing government services and quality of life in Cedar Falls. You can read my platform on my website at robgreeniowa.com/mayor. Again, thank you for attending tonight and for seeking to be informed and engaged residents, and I hope to earn your vote November 5th.
Mr. Brown.
I do want to say thanks for everybody who put this on, for our special moderators and such. And again, for this evening. I tell you, I love this city. The people that I have met in the last 4 years of generous people, the folks of faith and fellowship around the community is just unmeasurable in terms of the appreciation I have to help lead this community. I think the evidence is there the last 4 years as far as what I ran on economic development, leadership, and communication. I want to expand on that in terms of a better and more effective push towards the high-tech sector. We have great partnerships in the Cedar Falls School District, in UNI, and in CFU, and it's just a great product to continue to get out there. We have some great evidence of companies that have come from Silicon Valley and all around the world. So I would appreciate your vote November 5th, and again, thank you very much.
And thank you, all three of you. Let's give them a hand.